starting that recording process now, and we'll begin. Welcome, I'm Ryan Holger with Temperature Equipment Corporation. You'll normally find me in the training classrooms and in the training labs and all that kind of stuff, but today you're getting me online for reasons that we mentioned earlier. We're a little bit ahead of schedule with this product launch for the new 26 SEER Bryant and Carrier inverter units. We were planning on bringing this training to you guys in a couple weeks, but we figured things are a little weird right now and some of you guys have more office time than you wanted. So we're gonna go ahead and get you a little sneak peek now with more of our planned training events to follow up very shortly here. If you guys have questions as we go, you could type them in that question box down in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and I'll glance over at that every 5 or 10 minutes and see if I can answer any questions that you have. All right, so why variable speed to begin with? Well, variable speed is not new stuff to us. We've been doing it for a while. I think this is year 9 of us having residential variable speed split systems. But the main primary purpose of it is to get better comfort. We'll explain why that is and how that evolves. But your house does not see the exact same outdoor temperature every day. It doesn't have the same internal loads every day. Things are constantly changing. So why wouldn't you want the air conditioning system to match the loads as the loads change, to give you the exact amount of temperature and dehumidification comfort that you need at that moment in time? So traditional systems, whether they're 1 or 2 stage compressors, they obviously, even if it's a 2-stage compressor, it's only right at 2 moments in time, and that's when you're at 100% of design, which almost never happens. And then when you're on stage 1 of a 2-stage compressor, it's usually 67 to say 71% of full capacity. So at that moment in time, you're correct. But instead of 2 stages, if you could have 4, 5, 10, 50, 60 stages, the more stages you have, the more tight your control would be. At some point with enough stages, we stop saying stages and we just call it variable. When I say we, the industry does that. I still tell the number of stages because that's what I like to do. But once we get above 3 stages, it's technically called variable speed compression. But we'll have better temperature control, tighter temperature control, lower indoor humidity for the reasons we'll explain here as we get into this. And we'll actually have longer longevity. That's a brilliant way to say it. We'll have longevity because we'll have less wear and tear on the components. As you probably know from any mechanical thing in your life, the more you start and stop it, the more of a beating it takes. When these things turn on and off, the metal heats up and cools down, expansion, contraction. Same deal with your car. If you're a taxi cab driver and you're going stop and go traffic all the time, the car is not going to last as long as if you live out in the country somewhere and you can just cruise along at 45 miles an hour everywhere you go. So less wear and tear because of less startup and shutdown type events. The humidity control is actually a big thing as well. The more stages of capacity that we have, the less likely we have to turn the system off. And as you're probably aware, your system is only dehumidifying when it's actually running. So if you've got a fairly oversized system like everyone in America and it's only 1 or 2 stages, when it kicks on, the first 3, 4, 5 minutes, there's no condensate, there's no moisture running off your evaporator coil. It takes time to get the evaporator coil down to the dew point of the air and then start pulling moisture out. But when you only have that 1 stage or even 2 stages and you bang them on and it satisfies the thermostat pretty quickly, shuts right off, you didn't have enough time to get a decent amount of dehumidification. If you only ran for 5 minutes, you only made dehumidified that last minute. So by having more stages and full variable capacity, we can keep the machine running and hence keep the evaporator coil wet constantly and pull more moisture out of the air. The lower the humidity I can do in your building in the summertime hours, the higher the temperature you'll be comfortable at. So most of you guys, just based on me polling my live classes all the time, most of you guys probably keep your regular thermostat in the summer set on 72, seems to be average. Sometimes guys in class will say 70 or 67. I had one dude that said 62 a couple weeks ago, which is crazy. My house, we keep it on 77, which may sound high, but it's not hot in my house at all. My family is pretty warm in general. 2 of my 4 kids are always complaining. Actually, 3 of my 4 kids are always complaining that they're hot. My wife doesn't really wear closed-toed shoes. She wears flip-flops in the winter. They're always hot. And at 77, no one is complaining at all because we do such an active job of dehumidifying the house. Jonathan is saying that he cannot hear the audio. Is anyone else having that issue? Just so I know. If none of you can hear me, then I'm obviously going to stop speaking. But if everybody else is good, I'm going to keep plodding along. Can you guys hear me? Can you type something in? All right, a bunch of you guys said yes, so it must be an issue specific to Jonathan, who cannot hear me to know that it's his issue. So we cannot help him right now. We'll have to help him later. We'll keep on moving. But getting that humidity in check is the way to go. If you didn't know it, by code for the entire state of Illinois per the energy code, and pretty much every state in the country for that matter, 75 degrees is the coldest temperature you're allowed to design someone's house for indoor temperature. You can't design for 74, 72, 70. I mean, you can. You're just not following code. 75 is the lowest. So we should be able to get people comfortable at 75 degrees. But when we don't do it the right way, it becomes really challenging for them. You probably have seen graphs like this before because we've used them with other variable speed compression products that we've had in the past. But this is kind of one of the ways we kind of explain it to consumers. If you just had one compressor, if you had one condensing unit, it's on, it's off. It's not going to ever match exactly what you need. But if you had variable speed, or in this example, you have 4 stages of cooling on a 4-ton system, each stage is 1 ton, I got pretty good opportunity to match up the actual needs of your house. It's like if you had a big system and a medium system and a smaller system and then a little tiny baby system, and you turn on whichever one you needed for that moment in time. That's the kind of idea there. Dehumidification, like I said, is huge. These systems can remove 400% more latent, more moisture from the air than any of the other systems that we have. We have a pretty low turn down on these new units that you're going to see. It is better than our 2 current variable speed products. So what I mean by that, we've had the variable speed green speed systems since 2011 on the heat pump and then the AC a couple years ago. Those guys go from 40 to 100% in 1% increments. Then more recently, maybe, I don't know, 4-ish years ago, we came out with the smaller inverter unit, which we also call the 5-stage unit. That guy has a better turn down. He goes down to 25%, but he only has 5 stages. So we have a 5-stage that goes down to 25%. We got a 61 stage that goes down to 40%. And the new one that we're going to show you today is better than both of those. The more staging capacity we have, longer run times, optimize the compressor, dehumidify without cooling is functionality that we have. We can do all those things that you're used to doing on these really high-end systems that we've worked with you guys on in the past. So we're trying to match the load exactly for the customer. One size does not fit all. We can improve the humidity, improve the air quality, improve the temperature, be ultra quiet in that process. So we'll kind of get on with that so you guys can see how that exactly works. Like I said, it's not new. 2011, we started doing variable speeds, traditional split systems with Carrier and Bryant, and it's kind of grown from there. We've had one in our Melrose Park lab since 2011, and obviously we have them in all of our labs now as well. This new unit that we're going to talk about today, the process to develop that actually started in 2016. So that tells you kind of the R&D cycle of some of these projects for the engineers to develop this technology and figure out how to do everything the way they want to do it and come out with something better than they came out with 5 years earlier kind of thing. So that's a 4-year process in this case to take it from birth to actual production of the product, which should come out here in the next month or so. My fingers are literally crossed as I'm telling you that. The way the country is going right now, I don't know how fast things are going to start shipping around the country. But when they look at these processes, we've had some issues with some of the 61-stage inverters in the past when they first launched, the growing pains, if you will. So they looked at all that warranty data. They did all the what we call voice of the customer, where we, meaning the factory, talks to all the contractors, not all the contractors, a large quantity of contractors that have had issues. Say, hey, what do you like? What do you not like? What went wrong? Why did this happen? And they try to collect all that data and then say, after that, hey, what can we do to fix all that stuff? Because we want to launch the next thing without any pain. And when we launched the 5-stage unit, it was pretty painless compared to the other one. There's also a lot of testing involved. There's tons and tons of testing that is mandatory as part of AHRI and other entities. And we're not even going to talk about that today because every manufacturer has to do that on every product. But Bryant and Carrier do even more testing than they're required to do. There's a lot of testing that is done. They specifically have this chamber that basically beats the crap out of stuff. So they stick stuff in the chamber, whether it's the inverter that they're coming up with or the circuit board or whatever it is, and this thing shakes it to death and cooks it and freezes it and slaps it around, gives it really, really crappy power, and then to see not only if it's going to be able to survive for X amount of time, but they just keep testing it and testing it and testing it until it eventually fails, which is kind of unique. It probably is a really fun job to have. You just get to break everything. But they keep testing it until it fails, find out which piece failed, make that piece better, test it again, test it till it fails, find the broken piece, fix that, keep on going until you've got most of these pieces being, very durable. So they do all kinds of testing for Bryant stuff and Carrier stuff that's well beyond what the regular scope of the standards would include. And this is just a list of that stuff that they do on the equipment that they don't have to do, that they choose to do. In the case of this new unit that we're talking about, this just gives you an idea of some of the components that were tested before they even came out with the beta units. So how many units were tested, where they were tested, VFDs, which are the inverters, if you will. They tested 300 different ones, 300 different tests they ran on different units to test that out, just to see, because that's a concern, because that's the most expensive piece in the thing, obviously. So want to make sure that that's all functioning correctly. So that brings us to the new product. So for the Bryant product, it'll be called Bryant Extreme, Bryant Evolution Extreme. And for Carrier, it'll be the Carrier Infinity Green Speed. Those are the names of the current 61 stage units we have now. This is a replacement unit for those. So when these ones come out, those other ones will phase out. We're still going to have the 5 stage because that's a really nice unit, really good price point, nice size and all that stuff. But the big boy, the inverter we had since 2011, that guy's getting replaced by this new inverter. The SEER, as you probably know, is up to 26 SEER on the cooling models and 24 SEER on the heat pumps. And you guys know the deal with the up to, right? So we'll explain that again for those that don't know, but we'll go into that in a little bit here. It'll have better dehumidification than the previous product, and obviously better dehumidification than any other product in the market from any other manufacturer for residential systems. We'll have a wider operating range than we ever had before, and lots of features coming on the service side to make things even better that way. And then my favorite thing is it's even quieter than anything we or anybody else have at all. It is freaky quiet, and we'll explain that for you guys too. Like I said, on the Carrier side, it's called Infinity Green Speed. So you should be used to those marketing names. The cabinets, you'll probably notice, are physically the same cabinets that we had on the old ones. It's all the stuff inside that's physically changing, and there's lots of stuff changing, but the cabinets and the visual look of it are what you guys are used to on the current product lines. So what's the lineup going to look like once the new units come out? The 21 SEER will phase out for the AC, and when 20 SEER on the heat pump side will phase out, and it'll be replaced by these 26 and 24 SEER models there that we have highlighted in red. So on the Evolution or on the Infinity side of the equation, we'll have the same basic lineup. We'll have the single stage Infinity Evolution, which is stupid. Don't anybody buy that. I don't know why you would. I don't know why you buy a high-end thing and only get one stage. Then you have the 2-stage models that we have had in the past. And then you have the 5-stage inverter, 24 VNA9 and 189 BNV. And then we have these new ones. So on the Carrier side, it'll be 24 VNA6, where the 6 stands for 26 SEER. So that'll be a little bit confusing because historically a 6 means 16, but now the 6 will mean 26 SEER. We've surpassed the 20 number, right? And then on the Bryant side, 186 CNV with the model number on that side. Heat pumps, same kind of story. Those guys go up to 24 SEER. I know we don't do a ton of heat pumps in this market, but we do a fair amount here in the greater Chicagoland area and Northwest Indiana. But those will be the model numbers you'll have for the heat pump side. For Carrier, heat pumps always start with 25, so 25 VNA4. By the way, the V means variable compression, N means infinity. We don't use I for infinity because I's and model numbers suck. So 25 variable infinity A version 4 SEER, 24 SEER. And then on the Bryant side, the 2 at the beginning of the part number means that it's a heat pump, whereas the 1 meant that it was a straight AC. So 284. 8 means Evolution, 4 means 24 SEER, and so on down to the part number. So some of the ratings that you're going to see on these units when you look on AHRI directory. Obviously, the rating is a function of the condensing unit, the evaporator coil, and the fan system, which means fan coil or furnace. So you'll have different ratings for different ones. And like all other products that we've had in the past and all the competitors' products we've had in the past, when we say it's a 26 SEER unit, that means up to 26 SEER. Just like right now, when we say it's a 16 SEER unit, it means it's up to 16 SEER. So certain combinations will hit that, some combinations won't hit that. Usually it's easier to hit some of these usually on the fan coil side of the equation and on the 80% furnaces. The 90s are a little bit harder to get the high SEER because you have the restriction of the heat exchanger, the second heat exchanger to push air through. But what I want to point out on some of these ratings, there's two things I want to point out actually. One is not only is the SEER rating pretty high, the EER is pretty high, which compared to our 5-stage units is a big plus. The 5-stage units are really small, really compact, have nice high efficiency, 19 SEER in those cases, but they don't really have great EER. It's not a big deal usually because high EER means you're at full load, and full load almost never happens, so who cares? But if you stick around to the very end of this presentation today, you'll see why high EER is going to matter again, and why you're going to want to look at this unit. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that you'll notice by looking at these, specifically if you look at the two combinations with furnaces, 80% and 90% furnace, you'll see the 5-ton units are actually more efficient than the 4-ton units. And that's not usually the case. A lot of times we and other manufacturers will share cabinet and coils between the 4 and 5-ton. Basically the 4-ton is just a slowed down version of the 5-ton. That's not the case here. In order to keep that 5-ton up at very high SEER levels, the technology is 100% different than all the other sizes. So the 2, 3, and 4-ton are technologies that you're familiar with, just improved, and the 5-tons can be completely different. So we'll have to take a little bit of time to explain that today. If you guys do heat pump work, here's your initial ratings for the heat pumps. Obviously, there's many more ratings than we're showing you on these two screens, depending on the various combinations of furnaces and evaporator coils you have. But this is just giving you an idea of where things approximately stand. And I didn't make these slides. If I did, the 90 and 80% and fan coils wouldn't switch positions on the slides between this one and last one, so I apologize. But you can see we get to some pretty high SEER levels on the heat pump side, and then we have an extra column on here for HSPF, heating seasonal performance factor, which is the heating mode efficiency of a heat pump. So SEER is the cooling side, HSPF is basically SEER for heating, if you will. And getting those guys up above 10 is very desirable. And you can see in this case, in some scenarios, we get up to 13 HSPF, which is top of the line. Nobody else can do that kind of thing. It's a bragging point, if you will. So the 5-ton unit I mentioned is different than all of the other units. The 5-ton unit has a brand new feature called vapor injection. This is not something anybody else has had in the past. I'm sure eventually they will, because that's how things go. But that's going to be the big difference here on why we can have the 5-ton be so much more efficient than we've had 5-tons in the past, and even more efficient than the 4-ton model, which is crazy. Generally, what we do is put the 4 and 5-ton in the same unit and just overspeed one and underspeed the other, but that's different in this case. So we get some pretty high efficiencies here. So here's the quickie version of how this vapor injection works. There's an extra piping route on here, if you will. So if you follow along with me, we put numbers on here so you can try to follow along, since I can't physically show you one in the lab today kind of thing. But what we're going to do is, coming off of the condenser coil, we're going to grab some of that subcooled refrigerant, not all of it, just a portion of it. That subcooled refrigerant, we're going to pull it off of there into a separate line, and it's going to go through an expansion valve, which is obviously going to force the pressure to change. And as you know, PV equals nRT, so when we change the pressure, we're going to change the temperature of that fluid going through and transform it into a liquid vapor mix, then passes to the heat exchanger where we can cool the other refrigerant that didn't go through there, if you will. And then we're going to send it back to the compressor and inject it back in again. And then in yellow there, the rest of the refrigerant goes, into the house to the rest of the system. And in blue on the top right is where the refrigerant is coming back from the house. There's going to be more details as we dive into this. We also have a video that we're going to share with you guys as soon as the factory says we can release the video to kind of explain how this works. And then obviously we're going to have technician training for this because it's different. And anytime there's something different, you can't just throw it out there because people will freak out. By people, I mean you guys. People will freak out. So we have some additional training coming for that to help with the technician side of the equation. But this is the reason why we're able to get to that higher efficiency level with the 5-ton unit. I mentioned the dehumidification being better than standard systems, obviously, and it's even better than all of our previous systems. So compared to a traditional 13 SEER single stage unit, it's 400% more dehumidification than we had. If we compare it to the normal test conditions for the AHAM, it's 70% more removal. And if we compare it to even our current green speed unit, our quote unquote 61 stage unit that we've had since 2011, it's 30% more than that. And that guy was a beast. He was a good dehumidifier. I'm saying it like he's dead. We still got it for a few more months, right? But it's a lot of dehumidification removal. If you put in a dehumidifier when you have this unit, there's definitely something wrong. In fact, if you did it on the old one, there's something wrong. You need to talk to me, and we need to figure out what the hell's going on with your house. In our climate, you should not need a dehumidifier and a green speed extreme type unit. It's one or the other. The sound levels are another huge improvement on this particular unit, and some of the things that help out with sound we've had on units for quite some time. So I'm sure you guys are all familiar with the forward swept blades, or as my kids call it at the house, they call it the Batman blades. I'm not sure why, because there's like 3 of them. It doesn't make any sense, but that's what they call it. So we have those same forward swept blades, which reduce sound. It has that silencer top where that shroud kind of curves inward. That helps reduce sound. We have compressor blankets, which a lot of manufacturers do that, obviously, to reduce sound. We still have the split post grommets for the compressor base. So there's think of it this way, there's a post on all 4 sides of the compressor, and that post does not go into the bottom of the cabinet. It goes into a rubber grommet, and the other side of the rubber grommet is another post that goes into the cabinet. So it's like a little mini shock absorber. So we have those 4, like you see in the bottom left-hand corner of my slide there. And then that plate that those 4 are mounted to is laminated. So if there is any metal touching, you don't get that chinging noise. It's a laminated flat type sound. That combined with slower compressor speeds, slower fan speeds, all that contributes to make this a pretty quiet unit. And by pretty quiet, I mean it's literally the quietest unit. Like, you can't find a quieter unit than this. It's quieter than anything we have now, and we have stuff that's super quiet. I have some of my units that in the training lab that I turn them on for classes before the guys come in the lab, and I have them running. And then as we're talking in the lab, they say, well, let's hear this thing you've been talking about, Ryan. Let's hear it. I'm like, dude, it's been running the whole time we're standing here. And they're like, holy crap. You can literally have a conversation. Don't even know the unit's on. This unit's quieter than that. It has lower dBA sound ratings. So as you can see on the screen here, the top is the AC, the bottom is the heat pump. And then for different modes there, if you take a traditional, or not traditional, but typical 3-ton AC, it's going to be between 53 and 62 dBA for the sound. What the hell does that mean? 62, 52, I don't know what those dBAs mean. So I had to go grab another chart to kind of look at that just to see where that lands. Normal speech is 60 dBA. So for the 2-ton, it's never going to be above your speech level. The 3-ton basically gets to your speech level. And the 4 and 5-ton only get up to your speech level when they have to go all the way up to full max cooling, essentially. This is a really quiet unit. On the low end, we're down in the 50, 52 range. That's barely more sound than the indoor unit of a duct-free split. And duct-free splits are really quiet. So this is really quiet stuff. And I mean, you could put it on your patio, and you could have it on your patio and be out there with, you know, your buddies drinking. Not that you would do that on your patio, but like if you were having a beer or 17 glasses of wine, and you wouldn't even know this thing kicked on. Your buddies wouldn't even hear it. They wouldn't even know. It would just be making a little bit of airflow noise if they happen to even notice that. So very quiet. There's also a quiet mode. I don't even know why that even exists, honestly. I have the 5-stage unit at my house, and it is freaky quiet. Like, it's imperceivable. Like, you can't even tell it's on. So for this thing to be quieter than that and then also have a quiet mode, I don't know why you'd even do that. But it's on there. So you can, if for some reason it's your unit's right next to your bedroom window, and the slightest sound noise annoys you for some reason, I guess you could put it in the quiet mode manually and get it to even limit it down. You do lose some capacity, but it's not that much of a difference. Oh, finally somebody typed something in. I was hoping you guys would type some questions, but you guys are so boring. You haven't been doing it. But Mallory types in, who can hear anything after 17 glasses of wine? I'm not sure, Mallory. You'll have to do some experiments this week. Send your test data to me after you've tested it out. Anybody else, type some questions in, and we'll try to answer them the best we can. By the way, while I'm taking a little breather here, in addition to you typing questions, and if you look down in that chat box, you'll find the link that I sent you to the other webinars. And then there's also a handout box in the bottom right-hand corner of your GoToWebinar screen. And there are 2 handouts there. One is Bryant, one is Carrier. It's a PDF. It's like I think it's a 10 or 12 page document that kind of has some of these highlights on there. It's one of numerous pieces of literature that we have on this already, and we got a bunch more stuff obviously coming from the factory, but it's kind of a little teaser to get you going with some basic information. All right, what else is going on with this unit? You probably are aware that Bryant and Carrier have a service app for technicians. So it's an app you put on your phone. You can scan the barcode on a piece of equipment. We've had this for several years. It pulls up the information on the unit, the model, the serial number, the manuals that go with that unit, the parts list for that unit, tells you if the unit's still under some kind of extended warranty for the customer, warranty history, all that kind of good stuff. Now, what's going to happen on these new units that we're talking about, these new inverters, they have Bluetooth in them. And you're going to be able to, as a technician, take your service app into someone's yard, sync it to the unit with Bluetooth, and interrogate the unit for data. So it's more information than we ever had before. Now, you already get a lot of data on Infinity and Evolution stuff when you go to the thermostat, but these units are going to have significantly more data available, a lot more codes and stuff. And by the way, the codes all come out in plain English, which is nice. More data available, and now you can get it while you're standing next to the condensing unit without having to walk back inside and go back and forth to the stat. You'll be able to see everything while you're standing there. So you'll see more information on that coming out too. I'm going to give you a couple of quick slides just to get you going. But you obviously would have to pair your technician app, your phone, to the piece of equipment that you have. It's no different than pairing your phone to, your car or something like that for Bluetooth. You say, I want to pair it. It says, yep, confirm this is the one you want. Yes, it is. Click pair, and then it goes and connects. It's pretty fast. It's under a minute to pair. And then after that, you can see everything the unit has going on with it. You'll see all the fault codes that are available, unit parameters. You'll be able to see what RPM it's running at, what the voltage is, what the refrigerant pressures are, things like that, compressor temperatures, compressor RPMs. You're going to have all that kind of data available to you, as well as any fault codes that are happening, and you're probably there because there's a fault code. Otherwise, why would you be there? So all that kind of stuff is going to be available to you. Jay asks in, can I update the software without being at the Infinity wall control? Yes, you'll actually be able to do that. You're like one slide ahead of me, Jay. You're obviously pretty smart. So yes, you'll be doing the software update that way. So a couple different things. One, right now we can do software updates on the Infinity and Evolution wall control, the control on itself, the thermostat, if you will. But we can't really update the circuit boards in the condensing unit outside. Whatever version of software you have is what you have. If for some reason you ever needed a newer version of software, you had some weird problem that only happens in your town and you wanted a newer version of the software, and you needed that, you would basically take that circuit board out and put a different circuit board in, which is obviously a pain. Now what you'll be able to do from the app as a technician is you'll be able to download from the internet the current software into your app and then push that software into the condensing unit circuit board via Bluetooth. So if something happened, like you needed a new feature or there was some quirky thing and you thought the new software would solve it, or tech support said get the new software, you could push it in right there while standing in the yard without having to touch any wires and do anything like that. There's also troubleshooting trees. Some of the products actually have this already, not even just this new inverter. Some of the other ones have it too, some of the new furnaces. And you're going to eventually start seeing this on more and more products that come out from Bryant and Carrier. But these troubleshooting trees are kind of like step-by-step guide you through. Like you pull the tree up on your service app and tell what unit you have, obviously, or scan the unit. And then it'll say, hey, what are these problems that you have? And you click the one that you have and say, okay, well, I'll check this. And you check that and click the next thing. And it kind of walks you through the troubleshooting until you get to the broken piece. Same information that's in all the manuals, but they finally realized that we don't want to read manuals. And by we, I mean me. I don't read books. I'm not going to do it. I'd rather like fiddle with it. But if I got a screen prompting me through it, even though it's the same thing I could have read in the book, I might actually do it. Breaking news. John just texted in that the Bears traded for Nick Foles. I don't know if John's scoring with us or if that's true, but either way, breaking news, right? John was a reporter in a former life. So some of the features on the app that are specific to the 26 SEER unit that's coming out: Bluetooth pairing, obviously, over-the-air updates, display all the fault codes of the unit, display all the current parameters of the unit, and then have these interactive fault trees where you can kind of walk your way through there. This should make it easier for the technician. You can do some basic stuff without even having to get into the unit, if you will. 145 diagnostic points. I forget how many we have on the current green speed, but I want to say it's like 40 something. So this is significantly more things that are being checked and maintained and monitored and babysat, and trying to make it a little bit easier for the tech. Yes, it's a more complicated piece of equipment, but if we can make it easier to service, that kind of goes away. Kind of like the Infinity Evolution stats. Yeah, they're doing tons of stuff, way more than a regular stat does, but it's super easy to install them. In fact, most of the guys that come to class tell me it's easier than a regular stat. There's like no thinking. Wire these 4 wires, and it just does everything else on its own. It's kind of like that. So yeah, it's more complicated, but it's also smarter, and it makes it easier for us. We have a second confirmation that Nick Foles is now on the Bears. I don't know why I'm reading the things you guys type in. I must be an idiot, but keep typing in weird stuff and I'll probably keep reading it. All right, a couple more things to tie us up here. You're probably aware that ComEd has moved to a mid-tier incentive program for residential central air conditioners. That means you get your air conditioner rebate, you meaning the contractor, you get your rebate from your distributor, meaning TEC. You do not get it from ComEd anymore, and the customer doesn't get it from ComEd. You get it from TEC. For whatever quirky reason, they lowered the dollar amounts when they did that. And by the way, I just stole their slide out of the ComEd, so those webinars are from last fall, so you can ignore those dates on the bottom. I should have cut those out. I didn't think about it. But what I wanted to show you here is that $100 15 SEER, $150 16 SEER, and then 18 SEER 225. Yeah, we have plenty of units now that make more than 18 SEER and you can get the bigger money, but you have to have like the right magic combination of coil and furnace and everything to get to that 18 SEER. Now, when these units that we have coming out are 26 SEER, you'd have to make a pretty big effort to not hit 18. Pretty much it's going to be like a lock to get the 18 and get the bigger rebate, get the double rebate, if you will. The other thing I want to make sure you're aware of as well is that federal tax credits are back residentially for your primary house. We've had these on off and on for numerous years. A couple months ago, they did pass the law in the federal budget to allow them to be active again, and they're retroactive back to 2019. That's stupid because 2019 already happened, but if you're doing your taxes right now and you put in a good system last year, you can go back and get that money. And for you guys that work with residential homeowners, you should probably look at your install history and see if you have customers in that boat. Send them the AHRI certificates and tell them they can get a bigger tax credit back as a little like nice thing to do for them. And maybe they'll actually ask you about other stuff like duct sealing or indoor air quality solutions or whatever else. But in this particular case, instead of making it retroactive only like they've done in the past, they've actually extended it through the end of this year as well. So that means for the next 10 months, you can do these things. Right, and it's the same kind of deal as before. You can get $150 on the furnace by putting a 95% in. You can get $50 by putting in a high efficiency fan like an ECM or variable speed fan. You can get up to $300 by putting an efficient water heater in. And then for today's discussion, what we're going to look at is you can get up to $300 by putting in a more efficient heat pump or air conditioner. It's a 500 max, and that max comes from 50 for the fan, 150 from the furnace, 300 from the AC heat pump or water heater, so up to 500 in that regard. You have to hit these tiers though. So for a standard air conditioning system, if it's a split system, which is what we're talking about normally in this market, you have to hit 16 SEER and you have to hit 13 EER. And 13 EER has been kind of the sticking point with some of the systems, so you should be able to get up there on a lot of these combinations that we're talking about now. On the heat pump side of the equation, you only have to get to 15 SEER, 12.5 EER, and then 8.5 HSPF. You got to hit all three of those numbers to get to $300. So you could potentially be getting $300 off the federal tax credit, which people obviously have to wait for to get their money out of that deal. And then combining that with the 225 over here from ComEd, so you could be getting, $525 off of the system when you go ahead and put this type of system in. Coming up, some things we have for you. April 3rd, the head of our tech support group, Doug Bear, is going to do another webinar similar to this, although in much more length and depth, regarding the installation and setup that you need to do on these new systems. That was something we were going to do, as a live class later in April, and we're still going to plan to do that. But with things being the way they are, we wanted to get it done in a webinar, kind of at least in a preview format. And then in late April, early May, or whenever we're allowed to have large gatherings again, we'll resume those classes, those live in-person classes with you guys. But mark that down on your calendar for your service manager or even your technicians to check that webinar out with Doug. There's some stuff that's going to come on My Learning Center, which is Bryant and Carrier's online training platform that's available to all Bryant and Carrier dealers. These are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 classes that will be coming up that are available online through them. That's in addition to Doug's webinar. We'll have the classroom and lab training that we've been planning all along. It just may get delayed a few weeks. And you will be required as a Bryant or Carrier dealer to get certified, i.e. trained by Doug or one of the other guys in his department in order for your company, your dealership, to be able to sell and install these. Things are different. Some stuff's going to be the same as what you're used to, but some things are different, like especially the 5-ton unit. We want to make sure we knows what they're doing. Not that you guys wouldn't figure it out, but we want you to do it the easy way, come to class and learn before we throw you out there in the field to actually install these things. Make sure we have a good launch. So if we kind of look at some of the summary conclusions of this new unit here, those are the model numbers for the Carrier AC, 24 VNA 6, heat pump 25 VNA 4, Bryant side AC 186 CNV, 284 ANV for the heat pump. That is going to replace the current 61 stage units. This new unit, I've been calling it the 76 stage because I just like stages better than saying variable, because variable only means 3 stages or more. So I like saying the number of stages. So we had a 5 stage and we had a 61 stage. Now this one goes from 25 to 100% in 1% increments. It's kind of like the best of our 61 and our 5 stages together. So I'm calling it a 76 stage unit. I'm sure the marketing folks will be all over my butt about that, but that's what it is in my mind. And the fact that you can turn down to 25% capacity, that's really good. That's pretty low, and you can pretty much match almost any load at that point. There's a 10-year parts warranty on this, which is helpful when you're selling things that are complicated. People want to be reassured that if something goes wrong, there's a plan B. When it first comes out, the factory is going to bundle it with the Infinity control. I think what will happen is when you order it, we, the distributor, will package the 2 things and hand them to your pickup guy. I don't think they're going to stick it inside the cabinet, but it will be bundled in there. So essentially, you'll be getting a free Infinity control when it first launches, because we don't want people doing this without Infinity, because that doesn't make any sense. You want something that actually is going to control all the stages. And I said Infinity, I should say Infinity and Evolution. That's my fault. If you didn't know, and I didn't mention it, but the compressors are Samsung compressors. The inverter and the compressor are from the same manufacturer. That was part of Bryant and Carrier's requirement when redesigning this. They wanted to make sure that they had a single source supplier for that quote-unquote assembly. In the past, with some products, it's been different suppliers, and then there could be potentially some finger pointing kind of thing. So in this case, one supplier takes care of it all. Obviously, like we said, the 5-ton is going to be a little different because of the vapor injection. Eventually, down the road, you'll see more vapor injection stuff. But right now, we're just starting with it on the 5-ton. But you'll probably see more of that in the future there. Jim from our office has written in mentioning that the replacement warranty, if the compressor goes down, we will replace the entire unit for you. So you don't just get a new compressor, which then you got to pipe in and all that stuff. If you have a compressor that fails for warranty purposes, you can get a whole brand new unit. And that's probably a pretty good peace of mind thing for customers as well. We have a much wider range of operation. We can go all the way down to 0 degrees on low ambient cooling. Now, the current green speed and extreme units can do that as well, but the 5-stage ones can't. The 5-stage ones only go down to 45 degrees. And those have been the ones that were ultra quiet and had the better turn down. So now this unit has even quieter, has great turn down like that one, and we go down to 0 degrees for low ambient cooling. So if you need to do a little bit of a light commercial area or like a server room or something like that, you could do that. On the flip side, we can go up to a full 125 degrees outside without losing any cooling capacity. And it'll still run above 125. It'll just lose capacity at that point. But it'll do, and if you get to above 125 in the Chicagoland, Northwest Indiana territory, you're already screwed. You're probably dead actually. But in Vegas and Arizona and stuff like that, this makes a difference. If you're doing the heat pump model, it'll run heating down to negative 15 degrees. So that pretty much, other than the weird polar vortex day that happened like once in my life, other than that, that pretty much covers us around here. You don't need the suction muffler like we had on the old 61 stage unit. That was a requirement to help with the sound. This unit's been designed around that problem, so we don't need that external suction muffler to be mounted in. So that saves a little bit of effort there. And we can do long line sets up to 250 feet. The old 61 stage unit could also do the long line sets, but once again, the 5-stage could not. So it's like, if you're used to the Carrier and Bryant products, it's like we took the 5-stage unit and the 61 stage unit and put the best of all of those things together in one unit. All the turn down ability, the staging ability, the long line sets, the quietness, all that is kind of built into one thing. So with that takes me to my closing here. Does anybody have any more questions? If I missed any of your questions, I apologize. There's a whole bunch here and I didn't get through everything, I don't think. Some of your questions are more install service related, so I'll probably just have you get those answered when you log in a week and a half on Doug's webinar. And then I will wrap up by reminding you that we have more webinars coming up. So specifically, the next thing we have coming up is tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Our partners at Respicare are going to do a webinar for us and for you on the commercial indoor air quality solutions. A lot of you guys are familiar with the residential products that they have, and a lot of you guys use the Oxy 4 and all that great stuff. But we're going to have a webinar for the commercial products. So if you're working with daycares, nursing homes, schools, stuff like that, we know everybody's calling and begging for solutions on improving air quality in those kind of facilities. So hopefully this will help you out and you'll know which options there are for what people. All right, let's see some of these more questions that came up. Jonathan asks, what refrigerant does it use? This current version of the unit that's coming out uses R410A. But that is a great question because in the next 2 to 3 years, we have a bunch of refrigerant changes happening nationally where R410A will start getting on a phase-out schedule eventually and all that stuff. So new refrigerants will start coming out. So this unit is using 410A, but it was designed in mind to be prepared for them to transition to R54B. So this one is 410A, and then another version of it will come out, and we'll have 454B. And then from a Bryant Carrier perspective, for X amount of years, they'll have both products available. Just like when 410 came out, everybody kept doing R22 and 410, and both things were running in parallel. That's what's going to happen here. You'll have 410A and 454B running in parallel. But this one is 410A. Roger asks, will we need to do a half size larger coil to get actual high SEER rating to qualify? So I'm not sure Roger's perspective on that question, so I'm going to answer it 2 ways. One, when I first started here in the 90s, everybody, meaning us and you, always put in an evaporator coil that was like a half size larger than the condensing unit. If you had a 3-ton condensing unit, you put it with a 3.5-ton evaporator. That's what you did to get better airflow, to get higher efficiency, to get better dehumidification, all those things. It was such a normal thing to do that in 2006, basically we changed the rating system. And what used to be called a 3.5-ton unit, we just started calling it a 3-ton coil. So then you would match like for like. 3-ton unit gets a 3-ton coil. You can also still put in larger coils in some cases to get higher SEER ratings. Sometimes you put in a larger coil that is a bigger size, like putting a 3.5-ton coil on a 3-ton unit. Sometimes you put the same rated coil, 3-ton on a 3-ton, but the coil is physically bigger, like taller, to get more airflow and more surface area that way. So to answer your question, Roger, I don't know the exact combinations. We have to look at all of the various rating combinations to see what you need with what. But honestly, if you can get in, even if, yeah, we say it's up to 26 SEER, but if you can get something for your specific combos in the low 20s, I don't know that it really matters to any consumer that you get a 23 SEER rated system or a 23.5 SEER rated system. I think as long as they're able to get the tax money and the maximum ComEd benefit and have a higher SEER rating than just about anybody else around there, I think they probably would be okay with that. Jonathan asks what the price range on the model is. I am going to have your TM give you the pricing specifically because I'm not smart enough to know all of that. But what I've been told is that it's basically the same pricing as the existing 61 stage unit. So whatever that costs, and I don't know what it costs because I don't get involved in the money side, whatever that costs, it's going to basically cost the same. And you're going to get the Infinity Control bundled with it, at least at the beginning of the product launch. So it should be a pretty good deal in that regard. It might be a little bit higher, I don't know, but it's not going to be appreciably more expensive of a unit. Rod asks, the federal tax credit, is it a once in a lifetime credit? Yes, Rod, that is a good point. It's all the exact same rules we've had on the energy efficiency residential property tax credit for the past 10 years or whatever. It is up to $500 maximum lifetime. So if somebody already did, let's say they did the $150 furnace and $50 blower rebate, or not rebate, tax credit 2 years ago, now they do the air conditioner, they can still get that. But if they did an air conditioner 7 years ago, they are not eligible anymore. It's once in a lifetime. You can get that tax credit. For most people, that hasn't come up yet because they haven't bought in a second system. But if you did move, then maybe it would come up. But that's a good point. It's once $500 maximum, once in your lifetime. Okay, it looks like the questions are no longer coming in. Somebody said Mallory's on her 12th glass of wine. You'll get to 17, Mal. You can do it. All right, with that, I'm going to shut the webinar down. This was recorded, so if you have a coworker that wants to see it, it'll be available at the exact same link that you registered for here, and it'll also be available on our website, tcmungo.com/training. Thank you guys for your time, and we will talk to you later.